Hi there, welcome to the lab. Today we're going to have a look at these two meters, the Proster branded T58B and the NJTY branded T58C. These kind of look almost identical, and the functionality across these two meters is almost identical. The T58C has a feature where it will measure the inductance in henries, but otherwise these meters are practically identical to each other. And I've done reviews of these two meters already, and I'll link those reviews. But some folks have been asking if I could do a teardown on these meters. And so I thought, well, let's have a look. Let's figure out what's inside on these meters. And let's see if there's any distinguishing characteristics on the inside, aside from the sort of very few distinguishing characteristics on the outside. Before I get started, I just wanted to ask that if you found this video to be helpful or interesting, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Questions and comments are always welcome, the feedback is appreciated, and it helps me figure out where to focus my activity, like this teardown video. So the first thing we have to do is we've got to take off the overmold, which feels like a PVC, and it's kind of stiff because it's cold here in the lab where I do the filming. So I'm not going to have you watch me struggle with this overmold. I'll figure out how to get that off. So there's the molding removed from one of them, and I imagine this is probably easier to do when it's warmer, and so I'll just sort of warm it up with my hands, and this one will be off in a jiffy. Okay, so that's the molding off on both of them. Now for the teardown, clearly we're going to be opening it up from the back, and there appear to be 4 screws, and of course the back is identical on these, no surprise. And I just hope that there isn't a screw hidden underneath the battery compartment. So it looks like 4 screws does it. So I've got the back off of the 58B. Now the 58C. Should try to make sure I don't get the backs mixed up, but they look identical. The back of both of the units looks identical. Clearly no difference there, not surprising. But I'll just put one over there and one over there just to keep them separated. Let's have a look at what we can see before we go too much further into this endeavor. The 58B is branded over here or labeled over here, and the 58C is labeled over here. And by and large, a lot of the internal layout looks similar, but not totally identical. So we'll have a look at what these chips are in a second on the two units. And of course we can see the fuses down here at the bottom. There's a 10 amp fuse and a 1 amp fuse there. And we've got the speakers in the middle. And it looks like the LCD here is attached with a few wires. Let's do a little bit of a close-up so we can read some of these chips. In the left side, that's a TM1727. That's an LCD driver chip. Then at the top there, that is an SD8107. Might be able to read that. That's a 20-bit analog to digital converter. And then here, this one is an SD7502. And so this is sort of a digital multimeter on a chip that has a variety of functions. And I'll throw up a little capture of some of the functions that this chip has that I managed to find on the internet in a second. This chart provides a high-level summary of the different DMM controllers produced by SDIC. The T58B uses the SD7502 controller. We can see that it supports 9,999 counts as specified. It has an integrated 4x18 LCD driver, and I'm guessing that this is not sufficient to drive the busy display in the T58B. The remaining SD7502 functions align with the features of the 58B. Now, a few other things to notice here. We can see perhaps the jacks have little LEDs beside them, because if you may recall the reviews, these jacks light up to tell you where to connect the probes. So you can see in the top right corner it says 10 amp LED, so that's the LED there, and then there's another LED there, if we can focus, the fuses of course, and we can see the LEDs for the other two jacks on the bottom there. There's a PTC there. That's probably for the internal temperature detection. And that's, aside from a variety of other control circuitry, that's all of the interesting stuff on this side of the board. And so in a minute we'll have a look at the other side of the board. So 7 screws, not too bad, come out easily. No surprise hidden screws. And then we can gently take the board out. And I think I've dropped something in there. We'll find out what that was. So on this side, we can see the contacts for the jacks and the LCD screen here. We can see the contacts for the rotary switch and the button pads. And then we can see here a little better, we've got the sensor for the non-contact voltage and the little LED light, and the light that lights up when continuity or dangerous voltage is just through that lens there. So not too much of interest on this side. And then if we look here, we can see that there's a little slide-in piece for the light and the non-contact sensor. That just slots in there. Now in case you happen to be disassembling yours, that little piece that slipped out, it fits right in there, and I guess that's used to hold that jack in. It's a little tricky to get the board to seat because these posts have to fit exactly in the right spots and they tend to get caught up, but not a big deal. Now, having a look at the T58C, we can see the board overall. Let's kind of come in for a close-up. And so a little bit simpler here. We have, if you can make out the number there, that's an SD78B NJTY. And what's interesting is that the 952 doesn't apparently have the inductor function, although this meter has the inductor function. And then we have the same, if I can get the angle of the light there, maybe not. That's the same SD8107 20-bit analog to digital converter. But you'll see that there's no LCD driver chip on this board. And that's because this multimeter chip includes an LCD driver as part of the overall package. And what's interesting is that both of these meters appear to have the same kind of a display. One of them uses the driver chip that's built into the multimeter CPU, so to speak, whereas the other one uses an external LCD driver package. Coming back to the chart, The T58C uses the SD78P P952 controller. This controller supports 9,999 counts as well, as specified on the chart. The integrated LCD driver is much more capable at 4x42, and this explains why there's no separate LCD driver chip in the 58C. The functions are mostly as expected, however there is likely a typo in this chart. As we have seen, the T58C measures inductance, and the labeling on the chip was clearly the SD78P P952. And then, similar to the 58B, we have the LED for the jacks up here, and the LEDs for the jacks down below here, and then the PTC there. So although at first glance the board seems very similar to the T58B, there is sort of a much more, apparently a much more advanced design here on the 58C. I'd been hoping that the name of the OEM for these meters would be readily apparent once the units are cracked open, but that hasn't really been the case. And these units are really similar externally in operation to this Habotest unit. This is the HT118A, and Habotest is an OEM, and their meters are rebranded by a lot of others. So what I'm going to do in order to try to figure it out is I'm going to crack open this Habotest HT118A and see if we can find similarity in the construction internally of this Habotest between these two other meters. So I've got the Habotest open, and at first glance there seem to be quite a variety of differences. So let's look a little more closely here. So first off, we can see that the design down here, well, we see the model number there, but the design for how the posts are lit up is different. So the LEDs are not on this side of the board, so it must mean that the LEDs are on the other side. The fuse arrangement is different. The battery mount is done with a bunch of springs. We've got a pair of PTCs there. And then in terms of the part numbers, this is a TM1729. That's the LCD driver. Then we have and I'll put the part in the overlay. This is the EEPROM. The logic is behind this glob of goo, so we can't really see what the controller is for this. And then this, I thought this was an analog to digital converter, but I can't find the data sheet for this one online, or at least I can't find one that makes sense. This is a DT1501B. Fairly different design on the internals. Now I'm kind of once again challenged because it doesn't seem to have the same genetic makeup or design history as the others. So I might have to do a little more digging to see if I can figure out who the OEM is of the other two meters, because it may not be Habotest, unless of course Habotest really revamped their design when they came up with these other units. I'm still sort of a little bit taken by the similarity on the light up jacks, especially when you look at them from the front. Very similar. So we'll have to a little more investigation. Now, if you found this video to be useful, helpful, interesting, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And until next time,